So thank you very much, Pedro, for your introduction. What we achieved, that we are here today, that is, in my opinion, as Klaus said, it is incredible because when we started with this initiative in 2015, the end of 15-16, nobody could imagine at that time that just a proposal of stratification of patients could become something that could give so much clinical trial, because we started in a very independent way, not with the ESHRE or the American Society. We always tried to collaborate with the society, and we do hope that in the future, the biggest society in reproductive medicine will officially sponsorize, philosophically sponsorize the POSEIDON criteria. So I think that the goal is there. So POSEIDON is not a classification system for poor responders, but is an attempt to move from the concept of poor responders to the idea of low prognosis. Because let me tell you, this is just a flow of what happened in the last years. The real reason why we decided to meet in Ischia in Naples 6 years ago. The reason was not proposing a classification system for something. The initial idea was to recognize segments of low prognosis patients that are different from poor responders. I mean hyper responders, suboptimal responders, meaning patient or advanced age patients, meaning patients that despite an apparently normal ovarian response in terms of a number of eggs, have a prognosis that is lower than good prognosis, okay, that we can define as normal population. So obviously we have to find a way to have these subgroups of a patient in a different categorization, and at the end of the day, the only possibility was merging poor responders with other patients with low prognosis for different reasons. And I think that the model is very practical, and it seems easy things sometimes represent the synthesis of very complicated, because the most I think seems to be easy, the more was the work that from complicated situations was made at the beginning. So after few months, we had the criteria published on fertility and sterility. And from these initial paper, many things happened. The first thing that we have to do was validate the classification system. Because I would like to just mention that POSEIDON has two souls, two aspects. One is stratifying low prognosis patients, and the other is providing something practical for the clinical practice in terms of a practical endpoint, meaning calculating the number of eggs we need for having at least one euploid blastocyst. So there are two different sides of the moon. And the first thing to do was validating the classification system. Because you can have a nice idea, think that something is logical, but if you don't have the possibility of proving, you cannot obviously demonstrate that the system is working, is useful in clinical practice or in designing trials with the research purpose. And so in very few years, these papers have been realized, and thanks to, in particular, to Sandro, to Hakan Yarali, to everyone gave contribution in this, because the community became very active, more than expected. And what I would like to point out is that if you have a look to the papers that had been presented in the last yesterday and today, I don't want to come back on the papers, but is the incredible number of good quality observation. So the validation, we have papers with more than 13,000 cycles for validating the cutoff values that had been proposed in POSEIDON classification for validating the capability of the system in discriminating among patients with different prognosis. So I think that this is very, very important. But what I think, this is my opinion, was the most surprising. At the beginning, we said, yes, hyper-responders probably represent a small percentage, is not so relevant problem. Clinicians usually don't pay too much attention to this. But following validation process, we realized that group 1 and 2 POSEIDON represent between 40 and 50% of a huge number of IVF units. And this is something that was not seen in previous classification system. So in previous classification system, I mean obviously Bologna criteria or other proposal, just normal responders, poor responders, and hyper responders risk for HSS. This was the categorization. So we were missing, we didn't see for many years a quantity of a patient accounting for 43, 45% of couples that we see in our daily clinical practice. I think that this is very important aspect. So this is just to say that now we have the first official World POSEIDON Congress, seems to be something. But POSEIDON initiative have been made here by here all over the world, and the POSEIDON community was growing a lot. And just to tell you something that, in my opinion, is impressive, now we have more than 150 official members on the website, but we need to increase because we need to work together from 25 countries from 4 continents. So we have to involve Australia because probably is the one. next meeting will be in Australia. And this is something I'm very proud about. POSEIDON community was very large, a lot of people all over the world involved at the moment of beginning of pandemic. And so any single society, international or local, provided guidelines concerning the management of infertility and IVF during pandemic. But POSEIDON was probably the first, or one of the first, to propose categorization of patients in terms of priority, to suggest that when IVF units were at risk of closing or were going to close for pandemic, we suggested in a large international community how to give priority to low or lowest prognosis patients. And this is something important. Sando made an equivalent also for male infertility, and the number of people participating at this initiative in less than 1 month was incredible. And this is, I think, one of the most important results of the last years of the POSEIDON history. And very important, and this is what I would like to stress, is that since the beginning we had a website, and the website at the beginning was spontaneous, but now has improved, and I will present something about the new website. Sandro is working about it, and we are all trying to give our contribution for making this website friendly and very operative. And the ART calculator is something that is available, is adopted in many centers. And let me underline something. In this meeting, we didn't want just give the opinion of physician in the daily practice, scientists and whatever. This is important, obviously. We need that our community has a meeting like this and sharing ideas, whatever. But we also tried to give the perspective of all categories involved, nurses, and including patients. And what is important is that this kind of approach based on visual counseling is very appreciated by the patient. Yesterday we saw a case of a patient asking for this. So it means that in terms of, we can say, compliance, friendly approach, and in terms of communication, which is probably the most important thing in our clinical practice, in our daily practice, this tool, independently of the scientific value is there. Obviously, it has to be further validated, improved. This is a machine learning approach, meaning that the more is the number of information, the more will be the predictive value of the system in the future. But the idea is there, and independently of scientific value, it is appreciated by patients and renders the counseling faster, immediate, and easier for the patient. This is something that I would like to stress, and we understood yesterday how the calculator has been validated up to now. There is a lot of work to do in the next future, but I strongly suggest to consider to adopt this tool in the daily clinical practice. And what about articles? So, and this is the point I would like to discuss in the last minutes. So we, at the moment, I checked for 82 articles. And at the moment when POSEIDON started were 42, if I remember well, Raul showed the picture. But only this year, the percentage of month-by-month papers is increasing, I checked. So I think that there are a lot of people worldwide that designing trials, meta-analysis, are considering to adopt this method instead of Bologna criteria. And this is very important in my opinion, because the categorization of patients renders, as Klaus Hiding-Andersen stressed, possible a better matching of patients' categories and protocols, and gives a better understanding of what is working in which kind of patient, not general basket of poor responders. And so the question is, in which direction we have to go? This is just to say that even the embryology community is attracted by the system, and POSEIDON is becoming transversal, approaching other categories of professionals. But what we have to decide, and this is something I hope we will discuss, in which direction, because there is an ideal direction and a spontaneous natural direction. So someone said in the past, if you cannot stop a wave, surf it. No? This is probably for daily life, something that we have to keep in mind always. What happened? The world, we had 20 years, 30 years of randomized controlled trial. So they are precious, important tool for understanding, for protecting patients from inappropriate treatment and whatever. But we have to recognize that randomized controlled trial, despite good quality, they are on the top of the pyramid of evidence. They are representative of a very selected profile of patients. So we can say that what we saw in the trial can be applied with a patient with the characteristic of the study, and man consider inclusion and very restricted exclusion criteria. But daily life is totally different. And so this is the reason why in the last year, the idea of big data collection became relevant as randomized controlled trial. This is my hope in the future. I don't want to say one is better of the other. I want to say we don't have to make the mistake to say only RCT are good and the other stuff is not useful. It is information provided by different perspectives and angles. And we can have important information, just what we have to understand, I think, in the future, is not confounding the idea of a simple retrospective analysis with the idea of retrospective analysis of very well collected data prospectively. Because if the information is well collected in good and robust database with good methodology, even if the analysis is retrospective, the quality of the information is very high. And so, all over the world, people are publishing 26,000 cycles, 32,000 cycles. So this is real world. And these are retrospective pure analysis. But I think that what we have to do in the future is designing very good randomized control trials according to POSEIDON, as the Professor Vieto mentioned. We also need it. But at the same time, organizing a very well-structured collection, prospective collection in the POSEIDON network. And so this is something that I think the question in my talk is, what next? I think that there are two things that we have to do. Improving the community through the website, and we are discussing about the possibility, because I don't think that POSEIDON has to be a sort of a gotha from one side, the side, and the other. I think that it's a community open to everyone. So we are discussing about the possibility of having a reference for any single, a coordinator for any single country. So if you go and you register on the website, and I will show you how to do, but it's very easy, you can candidate, you can propose if you want to consider the possibility to be POSEIDON referent for your country. Obviously, the decision will be taken according to the profile, but what is important is not how many papers you publish. What is important is how much you are motivated in making the system growing. And I would like to show you this short video, because this is the new website. I strongly encourage you to go on the website and to apply, and for using the ART calculator. You can use the ART calculator if you are a member. You don't have to buy the ART calculator. There is only a small subscription fee annual, which is at the moment, I think, 100 euros. That is nothing, I think, for just for sustaining the initiative, the website, and whatever. So this is just to tell you that in the website everything is explained the community, people that are involved in the board. The board can be enlarged. We have all the web to put people, so we are very happy if people are there. There is a section for literature, papers, news, congresses, so you can find, and there is a space obviously for the ART calculator that you can use at any moment for counseling, wherever you are, for counseling with the patient. And this is the section obviously related to the membership. So you just identify the category, and there are forum, possibility of sharing clinical cases, sharing ideas, proposing. I received so many intriguing proposals in the last day that and if you have something to propose, we can discuss, because I think that in 2-3 years, I hope we will have the first revision of POSEIDON criteria, because the POSEIDON criteria are not perfect. We have many ideas about how to improve, but we need more time, because we need that the system is better distributed worldwide. If we change now, probably it will create an unstable situation. And obviously we cannot spend all the time for describing, but the website is very easy. It's like so many others websites. You have a section for membership, section for literature, for a upgrading and whatever.